Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Welcome to Ask Rob and Rob. It's Tuesday, which means more property questions are about to be answered. Josh and Sally are in the hot seat this week. But before we hear their questions, a quick reminder of how you can get your own question over to us.
Well, we're going to make this super simple for you. Whether you want to get your question in to us on this very podcast or get your question possibly in the Sunday Times, we've got one link, one place for you to go to. And that is propertyhub.net/ask. There you can find the phone number, the button to record, or the place to submit your written question. We're of equal opportunities when it comes to questions, so wherever your preferred medium, we've got you covered. So think of your question, but before you go and do that, let's listen to this week's questions, because we've got two crackers in.
Hi, Rob and Rob. Yeah, when me and my partner met 13 years ago, he had his own 2-bed property. And then after a few years, we moved into a property together. And despite me wanting to use that money for the property, my partner was a bit more sensible and we managed to scrape through and keep the first property. And then over the years, we've upsized and we have our children in a family home that we're happy with now. And we don't want to move again from our family home. And that is at the kind of top end of our budget for our mortgage. But we still have the property that we have a buy-to-let mortgage on, the first 2-bed property. And that is due for a remortgage next year. And it's worth about $180,000 at the moment. When we're due to renew next year, we'll have about $77,000 left on the mortgage. So my question is, in the current climate, how much could we do with that equity? And what should we do with it? Thank you.
Sally, thank you for your question. And I've got a potentially unsatisfying answer for you, which is, it depends on what you want. What do you actually want to do? Have you got ambitions to greatly expand your portfolio? Would it be nice if you just picked up one more for a bit of extra income? Or would you actually prefer to be mortgage free? Without knowing that, it's quite difficult to give you much of a steer. But if we try to put some numbers around this, that if you assume your property is worth $180,000, you've got $77,000 left on the mortgage, and you were to do something with that equity, so you would try to remortgage to pull some cash back out, then the maximum extra that you'd be able to borrow, by my calculations, is £58,000. Let's round that down to 50 by the time we've had costs and things like that, and go, okay, 50,000. So what could you do with that? Well, that could be a deposit on another property worth approximately the same as the property that you've got now. So that's an option. It's 50,000 that you could invest in some other asset class entirely. Or you could do nothing with it at all and just leave it sitting there and let the amount you owe drift further and further down over time relative to the value of the property and relative to the amount of rent you're bringing in. The thing that you'll probably want to consider here is mortgage rates, because you're saying you're going to be remortgaging next year. Chances are you're going to be remortgaging at a much higher rate than you've become used to. Now, if we were back in the glorious old days of being able to borrow at about 2%, then I'd say there's a very strong argument of taking that equity out and investing it in pretty much anything, and you'll probably do better, make a positive return on it. Now you might find that if you took that equity out, used that as a deposit, took out an additional mortgage to buy that next property, then that could leave you with higher interest payments than your portfolio can sustain. If you choose to do nothing, then that's not the most exciting approach, but it leaves you in a pretty good position because your loan to value is under 50%, which means that even though mortgage rates will have gone up significantly, you'll be able to get the most competitive rates that there are out there because it's a safe bet for the lender. The loan to value is low. But all options are very much on the table, Sally. So I really would encourage you to start from the position of, where do I want to be in 10 years? Start there and work back. The equity that you've got is an asset that you can use to help you to propel you towards that vision. But you need to know what the vision is first in order to then work back and put the other steps in place. So thank you for sending your question in, and I hope that helps.
Next up, we've got a question in from Josh.
Hi, Rob and Rob. This is Josh. Big fan of the podcast. Really appreciate all the information you put out. I have a question. I have an offer down on a property which is above a commercial unit. So it's a maisonette and the property is above a cafe. I've gone through the process of kickstarting the mortgage application process, looking to try and use a 25% deposit. We've had a valuer come round and they've unfortunately declined because of the commercial unit underneath. I understand that this is potentially an issue for a lot of lenders because of the resaleability and potentially the smells and sound coming from the cafe below. We're looking at considering going with a few other mortgage providers who've seemed a bit more open to lending above a commercial unit, but they're asking for a larger deposit amount. But I'm just worried that throwing money at more valuations might just be money down the drain. So I was wanting to see if you had any advice as to how you would maybe approach a property like this. We've been told we could pay for it outright with cash, but I think we would prefer to keep some of that cash for another investment. Looking forward to your input. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Josh, thank you for your question. I'm not surprised that you found this a challenge, but it is a challenge, not impossible. It will depend on the mortgage market at the time and the confidence in the mortgage market, but there are normally lenders who would lend on this type of property. And it seems that you're starting to unearth them. I do worry, though, that you've taken the time to put an application in and it's not worked out. This is why Rob and I always recommend using a mortgage broker. And even more so when it's a unusual type of property. Now, if you are using a mortgage broker, Josh, I would be having serious words with them of why they've put you into a mortgage that has not gone through, because the broker should be ruling these companies out for you. That's what you pay them for, and you've now wasted money on that process. To be fair, sometimes it can be unlucky, but they should know. In the majority of cases, you shouldn't be putting an application forward, because a few calls into these lenders will be able to tell you whether they have the appetite to lend or not. But if you're not using a broker, this is definitely where you want to be spending that money and use one. You may need to put a larger deposit down, but again, I'm aware of products in the past, and it changes month by month, that have allowed people to lend at 75% above this type of property. So it may require to put a bit more money down, but just check. Now, I don't have the complete information here. So maybe there's a very good reason why lenders don't want to touch this property. And if that is the case, then I would be nervous to progress. Because when you come to sell in the future, and that may be a long time away, the person who wants to buy the property off you may have the same challenges and issues. And if that is the case, then that's going to impact the value of your property and who you can ultimately sell it to. So I would want this to be an incredible deal for me to consider moving forward. Maybe it's just got an outrageous yield. Maybe it's a double-digit yield. And you know what? If it is, fair enough. Maybe it's worth buying cash or putting a larger deposit down for. But it would have to be a super strong deal to get me to consider to move forward. Because there's lots of reasons to walk away from this deal. So to move forward, it has to be compelling. Just a word of warning for you and everyone else listening. Sometimes when we get committed to a deal, we just keep progressing and going forward. You get a deal bias, or to use a poker term, you become pot committed mentally because you've done so much work already. You just want to complete the task. You want to finish it off. It is painful to do, but sometimes the right thing to do is to walk away from a deal and learn your lessons. Those lessons are just as valuable. It may not feel it today, but you are now a more experienced property investor off the back of going through this process. So take time to assess it. Is it really worth all this hassle? Is it going to give you the outcomes you want in the future? Is it that brilliant today that it just makes it a no-brainer? Once you start to ask yourself these questions and ultimately answer them, you'll then be able to move forward. Good luck, Josh.
Good advice there. That's what we like to do on Ask Rob and Rob, and we love answering your questions, so do keep them coming. propertyhub.net/ask is the place to go. That's it for today, but we'll see you back here on Thursday for the Property Podcast. Have a great week till then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.